Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This video is about the views of Adam Smith and the classical school on the earlier forms of economic thinking, i.e. the mercantilists and the physiocrats. So let's look at the fundamental issue, which was the definition of wealth. And in this regard, I would like to discuss three perspectives on wealth. The first perspective was the perspective of the mercantilists, which was the dominant form of thinking between the 16th and the 18th centuries. So according to this form of thinking, wealth is gold and silver. So the higher the accumulation of gold and silver, the higher is the wealth of the nation. So the wealth is defined in terms of precious metals. And how do we acquire precious metals? Of course, that is through trade surplus. So if you export more, then you get more gold, and that adds to the stock of the gold in your country. So the wealth was considered to be a stock and not a flow. So the higher the stock of gold and silver, the bullions, the richer the country was supposed to be. So that was the mercantilist perspective on wealth. On the other hand, in France in the 18th century, we had the Physiocrats. This was a French economic school, and in their perspective, wealth was basically the agricultural production. So the agricultural land was the source of wealth, and the produce of the nation's farmlands was actually the wealth of the nation. And they believed that only the land created real value, and trade was sterile, did not create value, because people were just pushing the goods from one place to another, were buying and selling goods, but they were not actually producing a surplus or extra. Because in their perspective, when you put a seed in the soil, then the seed is converted into plants. So the seed expands, and the seed grows. So that's real wealth, that's real value. On the other hand, if you have a car or a machine, and you just keep selling between buyers and sellers, you're not really producing anything new. You're just exchanging hands, and that's not value according to the physiocrats. This was a short-lived economic movement. So in the 18th century it was born, and then it died off, and in the same century, towards the end of the 18th century, this movement was dead. Finally, we have the idea of Adam Smith, who defined wealth as not as a stock of gold and silver, but rather as a flow, as the production of goods and services. So in his view, what matters and what is more significant is the production of goods and services, of real goods and real services, which can improve the quality of life of the people, which can fulfill the needs of all the sections of the society. When they consume those goods and services, they fulfill their needs, and those goods and services add value to their life. So goods and services, the flow of goods and services, actually the production of goods and services using labor and the raw materials, actually creates value, and the real wealth of the nation is the real goods and services which satisfy the needs of the people. It's not gold, it's not agricultural farms. So in Adam Smith's perspective, both trade adds value, because when a buyer is paying money to get some goods and services, then that buyer values the goods and services more than the money. So if I pay $10 for a haircut, for example, that means a haircut means at least $10 for me or more. So I'm getting the value of $10 or more. And similarly, if I pay $2 for apples, that means I value the apples at $3. So I'm gaining some value, I'm gaining some satisfaction and utility from consuming the apples. So there is a value addition. So the trade also adds value. Uh, Similarly, agricultural production adds value, and all production is whether it's industrial production, agricultural production, that also adds value, or whether it's trade, all of those things add value. So in the view of Adam Smith, trade is not sterile like the physiocrats thought. Physiocrats believed that the trade was sterile and did not add value. Adam Smith believed that trade adds value. It's a win-win. Both parties win. So one of the party is losing something goods, but getting money. In the seller's perspective, the money has a higher value than the good, and vice versa. So those are the three perspectives on wealth, and accordingly, they devise their economic policies based on this definition of wealth. So it's very important to properly understand these fundamental definitions and concepts to be able to understand the economic policies which are derived from this understanding of wealth.